Hey guys, it's Crossroads here. Today I wanted to talk to you about PayPal earnings. PayPal earnings are coming up here for quarter four on Tuesday in the morning in the pre-market. I think, and as far as the bottom line is that they're going to post another triple beat. A lot of that depends on how they guide, but I don't think the top line numbers will be quite as exciting as many are hoping for. I think it'll be a good quarter. And the bottom line numbers, though, I think will be phenomenal. They'll actually set a new all-time high in two very important measures. So let's take a closer look at this together. As far as expectations, here's what the street is expecting from PayPal. You can see there's a lot of analysts that do cover this name. That's one of the nice things about PayPal. And the average estimate has them about 1.12 EPS. The high is up to 1.22. A year ago was 1.48. Important to note on EPS that 1.48 number, a lot of that is skewed from a one-time return from divesting from Happy Returns and also some strategic investments. And previously, their adjusted EPS did not account for stock-based compensation. So it'll look like on the surface they're shrinking. Thankfully, this is the last quarter that they're comparing apples to oranges, but that's really what's happening here. So things are actually looking pretty good. As far as my EPS numbers, I'm expecting that they'll beat what the expectations are slightly. I'm actually not as bullish as the highest estimate. That's a little change, but I expect 1.17. And a lot of that is the caution that PayPal warranted. They're launching a lot of new programs, and a lot of their marketing spend is being realized in this quarter. That's going to be one of those things that does hurt their EPS overall. Part of the reason, due to the softness of EPS, is they've launched several initiatives, kind of detailed here. So we, of course, had that Will Ferrell commercial, the Pay Everywhere program. They launched a marketing campaign around Venmo. They did rebranding work. They did a whole bunch of partnerships as well as rolling out the advertising platform and Fastlane. They had their first developer day. They had a lot of different things. Look at all these partnerships that they had as well. And there's an expense to that, even, yes, the debit cards, which are rolling out very, very well. And a lot of that expense is realized in just this one quarter. So when you have a quarter like that, what happens is you have EPS that's just a little bit more compressed than you would expect. That's one of the reasons why I think that they'll grow EPS, but perhaps it'll be a little bit less exciting than some in the market are expecting. Now, as far as revenue, let's take a look at what they're expecting. And so this is also from the street. We see an average estimate of 8.32 billion, low estimate 8.1, high estimate 8.51, and a year ago 8.03. This is thankfully apples to apples. So the market is expecting a 3.1% year-over-year revenue growth. I'm expecting about a 4%. So that'll be $8.4 billion. They might even come a little bit north of that. Now, there's some reasons why, and I think part of that is shown in this graph. Now, if you remember right, we've talked about this before, and it's important for PayPal. This is the dollar index, the DXY. What this shows, if you're not familiar with it, is how the US dollar is performed against other currencies. What does it have to do with PayPal? Well, PayPal is a global company, and as a result, a good chunk of their revenue is from international revenue. The stronger the dollar is against international revenue, the less it makes that look the stronger the dollar is compared to international revenue, the lower that number comes back because it is converted to dollars in PayPal's report. And if you look here, right at the beginning of the month, we were near parity at 100. That's just even dollars versus other international currencies. And you can see we got near the peak right around the close of the quarter. That means international revenue will not be quite as good as we would hope. Although it's just fine over there, it just looks like that because of the strong US dollar. It's not like this every quarter. They do also note dollar neutral revenue, although the dollar has just been so strong for so long. Oftentimes that has been a drag on PayPal, and it will be a little bit here as well. Now, other things as far as the revenue to note, one of those is Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Specifically, this was expected to increase by about 5% year over year for e-commerce, 5.6% to be exact. And for most companies, it accelerated much more than this. Now, PayPal didn't release their full numbers. They'll do that in quarter four. But over those 5 days, they call it the Cyber 5 days, they saw a 19% year over year increase in terms of revenue. that is absolutely fantastic. We had a healthy macro, no sign of recession. Consumer spend was up, especially for e-commerce. And I think PayPal did very, very well in terms of revenue. However, there's another factor that's drawing against their revenue, and that is their shift strategy with Braintree revenue. Namely, under Dan Schulman, they were willing to sell Braintree as a product and not make much money from it or make basically nothing, even in some cases, potentially losing money by somebody else using their product. Now, the thought was if they use Braintree, maybe they'll have a desire to use some of PayPal's other value added services. Now, that strategy did not bear much fruit other than accelerating revenue for Braintree. So, under Alex Chris, his number one modus operandi is driving profitable margin growth. And as a result, they are having these conversations with vendors saying, hey, in exchange for less volume, then we would like higher margins. And as a result, you're going to see Braintree grow a little bit slower than expected. The good news is on the bottom line, things will look quite good for PayPal, but the top line number of revenue, that's why it's going to grow, 3% according to analysts, 4% according to me. And PayPal themselves even said as much. If you look here, their guidance for revenue is low single digit growth, and they do note this shift in strategy, which will take a few quarters to actually bear fruit, although we are seeing that impact on the bottom line. So that's kind of why we'll see the headline numbers of many of these not be a miss in terms of expectations, but they won't look particularly amazing. Now, what do I think is going to be amazing for PayPal? Well, one of those things is free cash flow. Now, this is visualstocks.com, but it just kind of gives you an idea. Operating cash flow will look pretty good. This is free cash flow. And under Alex Chris, we've seen an acceleration in free cash flow. You can see that here. Quarter four, they did have some one-time realization that helped boost their free cash flow, but you can see how much stronger it is than in the past. They guided for putting up over $6 billion in free cash flow, which is a new record for PayPal going back to COVID era under Dan Schulman. And so this is an exciting increase. I actually think that they're going to come up with about $1.55 billion of free cash flow. And I expect that they'll guide for more than $6 billion next year because their bottom line is really ramping up very successfully. As far as other indicators, one of those things that I also find that's interesting is active accounts. We can see here that active accounts has, of course, peaked in quarter four 22. A lot of that was due to COVID era initiatives that under Dan Schulman's reign, they said, hey, growth at all costs. Doesn't matter if it doesn't help our bottom line. Eventually, these will be profitable users. Well, that wasn't the case. You can see what happened to prior management. That's why so many people are new at PayPal, is the prior leadership team had a flawed strategy that ended up costing PayPal dearly. You do see here in quarter three, this was the first time that they increased on a year-over-year basis, although the bottom did happen last year at this time. And it wouldn't shock me if we put up close to, if not a new all-time high for active users. So that would be, I'm actually guessing that we're going to be north of 435 million users that are active on PayPal. That's not the most important measure, but PayPal has a real flywheel now and a lot of products that consumers can use. And as a result, I think that this is a much better strategy where this is important, but it's not that number one headline number that they are caring about above all others. So I think that that'll be exciting, though, for the market to see that. Transaction margin dollars is another one they don't guide for, but they did talk quite a bit about this in the last several earnings call. What transaction margin dollars is basically the actual net dollars of what PayPal is able to take home. And so I think that this will continue to grow maybe about 7% year over year, an uptick from 6% last year. And really what's happening here is PayPal is all about that bottom line number instead of just those top line pretty numbers that gets the market excited for a few minutes. And then they realize, hey, their bottom line is not growing. That is a flawed strategy. That is short-sighted, and PayPal is not short-sighted anymore. In fact, next month, they will have their first investor day in quite some time, their first one under Alex Chris. I'm very excited to see and look at that long-term vision, that long-term goal as well. Now, as far as guidance, I think that that's going to be one of the most important factors here for PayPal. It's going to be interesting. This is the first time that they've had many of their first looks, actually all of their first look products announced. They, of course, launched advertising platform this last year, in this last quarter. They had announced and have launched some Venmo monetization measures. They've been working, of course, on growing that bottom line through the Braintree measures. They have launched Fastlane, and I can't wait to hear an update on Fastlane. Fastlane is something they're not monetizing. It does take a while to build up that ad platform. So I expect that they'll guide a little bit more aggressively than they did this year and give us full year guidance. But I don't think that they're going to fully price in all of those first look products. Some of those simply take time to scale. And that's what they're really trying to do, especially with Fastlane, is grab as much of the market as they can and then after that monetize it, and that will typically come either towards the end of this year or next year as well. However, I do think that they're going to reiterate at least $6 billion in free cash flow. That might be $7 billion that they ramp it up to. I think that they'll reiterate buybacks as well as increase that. Maybe $6 to $7 billion of buybacks this year. They'll probably say something like at least $6 billion, I would guess. I don't think dividends will hit quite yet, but maybe in a couple of years we can look at and talk about that as well. But the bottom line numbers will be very good for PayPal. Top line will look okay. They will still be a beat, and this will be a triple beat, but this won't be the most exciting quarter in history for PayPal. It's one of those things when you're changing strategy, you can think of PayPal as a massive ocean liner, and it just doesn't turn on a dime. I am very much looking forward to hearing the full report and, of course, having that guidance and then followed by Investor Day to really see what PayPal is cooking up. Long term, this is a phenomenal company to be invested in. They're going to continue to drive growth. And I think that we're near the bottom as far as that revenue growth over the next couple of quarters. Then we'll really see a lot of these new measures ramp. Of course, I've talked about the advertising platform in the past. I hope that they mention how that's doing and how Fastlane is doing as well. I think as those accelerate, people will begin to see PayPal in a new and different light, not as a dinosaur that's dying, but as an innovative leader in the industry. Price action will follow. Thank you, as always, for watching, commenting, and subscribing. Until next time, happy investing.